Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Startup Buzz. Every Thursday, 5 p.m., we try to give you new topics, topics which are contemporary, topics which are relevant, and topics which are important to you. Today's topic is extremely important on corporate venture capital. My good friend Sudhir is going to moderate, and I hope you have an interesting talk there. Please put questions whenever you feel like in the chat, and Sudhir will take it up as and when he feels necessary. Remember, every Thursday, Startup Buzz from CII Western Region. Log in, block your diary always, and we will ensure that you get really, really good topics for discussion. With that, over to you, Sudhir, and thank you for joining. Thank you, Siddharth, for agreeing, and thank you, Rishi, also for agreeing.
Thanks, Ninad. Thanks, Ravi. And again, pleasure to connect with all of you. I know the challenges of online webinars, so thank you to everybody for joining in, and even more important to all of you who are listening in. This is a choice that you always make to listen in, so thank you for the same. We'll try and make the half an hour to 45 minutes as productive as possible. I'm not going to waste too much time on for me to speak. I think it's more important to hear the speakers, but I just want to give a short background to them. We have two very distinguished speakers. We have Rishi Shroff. Rishi is director of JSW New Age. He's before that been founder of Lexpar. He's part of EO. He's done his law from Harvard Law School, MBA from Northwestern, and most importantly, he's at the moment looking at many new ventures, and we look forward to this interaction. We also have Siddharth. Siddharth is a partner with SC Ventures, which is a climate and industrial fund backed by Schneider. And again, he's had a long and distinguished career. He's got an MBA from Columbia Business School, BTech from IIT Delhi. So we are delighted to have both of you. And since I've been part of CII for a long time, and was very special for me to have Ninad, because Ninad and I were partners in crime as CII Western Region chairs quite some time ago when we had a lot more hair. So it's good that to see all of you again. I just want to set a 2-minute context, and then I will go across to the speakers. Some of the statistics that recently came out in one of the reports of Bain is that venture capital funding is rebounding in India to about 13.7 billion, and it was about a 1.4 times increase from 2023. All you have to do is to pick up the papers and see that India has never been more vibrant. India has never been so interesting from an opportunity point of view. As I always say, India is kind of like a kid in a candy store at the moment. There is just so much opportunity, and pretty much you can pick up almost any new age sector, and a lot of exciting things are happening. What has changed is that corporate VC firms, along with family offices and PE funds, have become much more active. And the number of family offices, corporate venture capital has really expanded dramatically over the last couple of years. At last count, there are about 150 active players in this space, and some projections are saying that it'll go up to about 500. So you have a lot of serious players with capital, but I think more important than capital, the know-how and all of the connects and all of the ecosystem that they bring. And that's why this has played a very strategic role in terms of growth. I can give you our company's example. We support an incubator, which is a Section 8 company. Over the last 5 years, we've supported almost 80 to 90 startups. Every year, we take on about 20-25 startups. This is also supported by the Niti Aayog. And we find some amazing entrepreneurs who are coming with, in our case, very early stage ideas. And possibly the difference that we can have as an incubator versus a corporate supported incubator is the connects, the let's say ideation to market. All of these things, in my opinion, can be a lot faster because we have very seasoned CEOs, other senior people to support all of the entrepreneurs in terms of their ideas. And when the funds come in, they come in not just as funds, they come in as partnerships to help grow the business in a very fast manner. So to my mind, it's something which has happened quite a bit, and especially I think in some of the areas which normally don't get a lot of support. Manufacturing, for one, is an area where we need a lot more innovation, we need a lot more funding, and typically it becomes very difficult for early stage manufacturing startups unless they are connected with the ecosystem, whether it is vendors, whether it is partners, to get funding. And even if they get the funding that they need is normally multiple X if they don't have the benefit of the connections, which can in some ways help, in my opinion, to carry the money a lot further. And that's part of what a corporate VCs can do. So I'm not going to go into more detail because, again, I want to have time for the participants also to ask questions. Rishi, maybe I'll start with you. If you could, in a 3 to 5 minute period, maybe tell us why you feel this is important. And I think most importantly for all of the listeners, there are probably many of them who are looking to get your insights into how do they get to be part of this ecosystem, how do they get funded. This applies also to Siddharth. Maybe if you could shed light on what do you feel they need to do to make these connections so they can be part of this evolving ecosystem. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Sudhir. Great to be here, and thank you, Ninad, for the opportunity. I think I must start with the birth of how JSW New Age began. I think that's a good way for setting the context. We actually about a year and a half ago started to get a lot of, even earlier, maybe 2 years ago, started to get a lot of really good financial sponsors and tier one funds who started writing to us saying that, listen, this startup looks really interesting. And they say that you're a big customer or you're a big client or you're a potential big customer. And then, can you please validate that they're really good? Can I speak to your team? And then maybe we'll make an investment. And so in that journey, we realized that, we are the ones who, for certain use cases and certain types of products and services, that we are best suited, given the businesses that we run, to know which ones stand out and how. And so we decided that we would participate along with these funds. Now, our strategy is not to try and make it look like a M&A situation, or try and take a very large stake, or to try and in some way at an early stage, for lack of a better expression, bully a startup that, okay, now you're in bed with JSW, and we can, so that is not thinking at all. The thinking is, the capital is just like an incubator. The capital is just to give comfort to that relevant, that tech startup, that you have our support, and for us to also treat that entity as a family member to us, right? So we do very small. So we do 500,000 to 1 million checks, and we are completely flexible. We can do even smaller, and we can participate even larger if opportunity arises. But we don't lead, and we try and work with, the financial sponsors or the other funds that are just looking at it from a return perspective, from a financial investment. And we felt we've done a few over the last few years, last maybe 18 months, and it's unbelievable. I mean, the ability to back them because you know them, but also back them because you've invested in them, has been a complete win-win for the few we've done, and we want to keep doing it. Just to quickly, before I pass it to you, Siddharth, is just to give you context on the kind of areas that we look at. So we are all, anything related to manufacturing in the core industry sector. So JSW is steel, cement, paint, infra, energy, now defense, a lot in sports, right? All these are areas that we look at, in anything in the entire cycle. So from manufacturing, supply, procurement, finance, any of the areas of a business, HR, anything that is relevant and in any way can do with our backing as a customer, vendor, supplier, we're happy to have a chat. But please, Siddharth, would love to also hear what your perspectives are.
No, fantastic, Rishi. And again, thanks for inviting me, and good to meet you, Rishi, as well. We have a slightly different take on corporate venture capital. And I would also say this is my third CVC startup basically in India. I've been earlier part of two other CVC funds, namely Shell Ventures back in 2017, and then a Japanese company called TDK Ventures back in 2022. So I got this opportunity to run a third CVC startup this time called SE Ventures, called Schneider Electric Ventures. So I think having experience of starting three different CVC funds, all having different kind of DNAs and different segments, one of the core learnings has been that if done right, this can be of immense value on the ecosystem. So, be it like Shell, TDK, or now Schneider, I think a lot of startups value the smartness of the capital, what we are bringing on the table versus just the pure capital. But then a lot of times what happens is expectations are not done right. You really need to be very clear on what you can bring on the table versus offering a lot of things. If you can be very particular where you can move the needle, I think that's the best thing about ACVC. We can go in detail for sure in the conversations today. But very briefly, the fund which I'm currently part of is backed by a single LP called Schneider Electric, as I was saying. We tend to go a bit more deeper into the startup. So we lead rounds, we go in with financial VCs as well. We try to position ourselves more as a specialist VC versus a CVC. And what I mean by specialist is we carry certain subject matter expertise in areas of interest of Schneider, because we can bring in experts. We have a full corporate backing behind us. So those specialist VC segment, right? There are three broad pillars where we invest. One of them is climate. We do very broad things around energy management, renewables, solar, wind, battery technology as well. It's very broad climate tech investment portfolio. The second vertical is industrial automation. Again, one of the areas which Rishi, what you do is also similar to what is in our focus. And again, I would say we can bring immense value by virtue of Schneider's presence in the industrial automation segment. And third is more about built environments like data centers and smart buildings and smart homes. So all these three areas, we try to position a specialist VC approach where we bring in a lot of expertise around the subject matter itself. The ticket size, what SE Venture does is up to $10 million. So it can be series A, B, and C. A sweet spot would be say between 5 and 7 million participation. It's a global fund. We are $1 billion plus AUM and platform fund. 40 plus portfolio companies, multiple unicorns in our portfolio as well. So the fund has been fairly existential since last 8+ years. And my intent is to kind of ramp up the Asia Pacific operations. So any startups which is basically coming from India, Singapore, broader Southeast Asia, Australia, happy to kind of evaluate those things in the focus area where we can bring some value. But yeah, interesting conversation. And yeah, the whole CVC world, as you were saying, Sudhir, is going through a lot of inflection point in India. Several companies, like I am myself scheduled to speak with two new entrants who are coming and exploring the Indian market sometime next week, just to understand the landscape. So there's a lot of enthusiasm which is coming from different players to explore India as a CVC space.
So let me jump into the first question. And again, for a lot of the participants who are probably in the process of trying to reach out to such CVCs, let me start with a very direct question, and I'll address this to both of you. This is always the question of finding the match, because the person who's looking for the investment believes that they have come up with the best invention since bread was invented. And obviously, their feeling is that what they have is something special. The challenge becomes you get lost in the clutter. And obviously, given what each of you do, there is a limited amount of opportunities that you would have to invest during the year. And obviously, the time that it takes, whether it is 1 million or 500,000 or $1 billion, there is a time which has to be taken to do the diligence, to do the understanding, to do all of this. And typically where things kind of, in my opinion, tend to be a challenge for startups is you may have a brilliant idea, you may be the right fit, let's say if it's for Schneider or whether it's for JSW, you believe that they could be the right partner. How does one ensure that we get or the investee company, potential investee company gets your attention and gets to the point where they are heard? After they are heard, it becomes a question of, okay, like in India, you have to wait for a court hearing. Once the court hearing happens, then you hope for justice. Here, it's a similar thing. How do you get to the people who matter and ensure that you get a hearing? And if you were to give advice to those listening in, how does one do that? And maybe if you could each explain for a minute or two what's the best example of how to reach out to you with a very focused message.
Go ahead,
Maybe
Siddharth.
we start with you, Siddharth.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. See, I would say it won't be very different compared to a usual financial VC. I think all of us, and this is just kind of the nature of the work what we do, that we tend to get so many applications, so many emails, and just being a human in the loop, right? I mean, we try to use AI for sure in the process of looking at the pitch decks and stuff, but still there's a lot of human intervention still in the whole process. So I would say try to make it more interesting. Just think about you being in our shoes and what would really make it interesting for you to kind of hear if you are the person with the money bag, what Sudhir was saying. I think the important elements to highlight is versus going in long stories and sending pitch decks, try to have a warmer introductions if you can from maybe possible co-VC or maybe a startup friend who is kind of a portfolio of that fund. So the warmer introduction always helps. That's number one, I would say. If that is not existing or that's not possible, go with a very interesting view on your company, right? I mean, show something which really differentiates you versus the hundreds of applications what might be lying in the email inbox. And things which you really should be highlighting is if you're a repeat founder, if you have done some good exits, if you have done very special kind of an experience in a domain which you are starting your new company, if you have some very interesting people on the cap table, if your co-founder is again having some very niche experience. So always try to highlight something very different. That's what really catches the eyes of a lot of investors. And then think lastly from the perspective of how you can bring them value, right? I mean, especially if it is a corporate VC, think from the element of, hey, how can you strategically work with their CVC? I think that angle shouldn't be touched with a financial VC, but for a CVC, it becomes important if you can also help them understand these are the areas you can bring a win-win partnership with that CVC. That really helps me understand that, hey, well, this is not just a cold email, but the startup has also put some thoughts before reaching out to this fund. And they also appreciate a value what we can bring on the table. So versus going in detail, I would say target these three things, which is a good startup.
Rishi?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I agree with all the points that Siddharth's made. The what I have seen in our ecosystem work like magic is if you find a way to work with us, which is non-investment related. I think, we've got very interesting companies that are first doing something for us, supplying or solving a problem. And if you come with that pitch, then your validation is immediate, right? Because you're solving something which is hitting my top line or my bottom line, or solving some strategic piece that the group is anyway focused on. And then the money or the investment follows. We have an example of someone who we reached out that you're doing such a good job with us. Can we participate in your next round? So that also happens. So my only addition to Siddharth's points is, if you really want a CVC or you target someone who you think is really valuable, then you should demonstrate your capability to them in some way, because it matches. If you're wanting them, you want them for a reason, and then if you can work with them, then that's validation immediately. uh,
Okay. Let me ask my next question, and maybe one of you could answer this one. Is that what what is a return expectation from from a CVC point of view, which meets the threshold? Normally, there is an IR expectation, there is other expectations. What is a reasonable expectation that you have that makes you feel happy that you made a successful investment?
Siddharth, go ahead.
I mean, I'm sure this is very customizable to each fund, but a minimum 3x 30% IRR in 5-year exit is kind of a default. That's what my CFO holds me accountable to. So I'm kind of sharing a big secret on how we are benchmarked on the minimum standards. So 3x 30% in 5 years.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I must also answer because ours is a completely different baseline. I have been told that the financial return is extra. I have to have created value for the group in some way. So anything I get more than 0% is looked like wow. Because what I measured on is, okay, if this one is something that we backed, how did it help me in some way? So I think both go together. If you can get the return, that's an extra for us.
I think it's a very excellent point because I can tell you, from the three funds which I've also worked on, all three had different expectations. So, I think if you talk to 50 CVCs, you will probably get 25 different answers on this one. And it's also nuanced how the CVCs are structured. Are you structured as a fund or you are a balance sheet investment? So if you're structured more like a financial fund, where you have a GP-LP kind of a relationship, then the financial expectations kind of become the norm. But if it's more like a balance sheet kind of linked thing, then I agree with Rishi. I think it's more like a strategic outcome becomes very, very important.
Yeah, we're balance sheet. Absolutely, Siddharth. Yeah.
How do you distinguish between what I would call moonshot projects and what would be incremental improvement projects? Obviously, moonshot projects are the chances of success are. I'll give you an example. We have a startup that we've been working with last 5 years, which is trying to develop a hyperloop. Now, a 28-year-old kid started working on this 4 or 5 years ago, and clearly for that kind of a project, it's a moonshot project. The chances of success are not high, but at the same time, if it works, it brings a lot of value both for the investor as well as for the community at large. When you are supposed to take trade-offs in the investments you make, and typically these, in both your cases, it seems these are early stage kinds of investments. You're talking about 500,000, million, that those are the kinds of numbers. Uh, what Let's say if you were to make 5 investments, do you have, and you would have timelines for each of these of exits and things like this. And this goes back in some ways to also kind of the point that Mr. Piyush Goyal made, which has been going around quite a bit in the last couple of months, which is how do you distinguish between projects which are kind of packaging something versus projects which are really creating something, and projects which are creating something tend to be long gestation with initial many rounds of capital required before you even can say that this project will fly or not fly. And uh, are you able to support both? What is your preference, and how do you think this is working overall, not just for you, both of you, in the community at large? Because the discussion is not just what you guys are doing, but overall what's happening in the ecosystem. Again, any one of you could take this.
Rishi, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, our focus is, it has to be in some realm of possibility. So I would say extreme moonshots, won't make sense. We would stay away. But something, and I think for the ecosystem also, if you're with a CVC, it's already somehow related, right? So a moonshot in your realm of possibility, like, if somebody is doing robotics and then somebody comes to them with an idea that is a moonshot but really relevant, it's easier to take. So for example, I give you an example. In our case, we are trying to back someone who's doing a lot of robotic work for manual activities that take place in our plant, cleaning and things like that. So in a way, some of that is a moonshot, right? You don't know if you can solve it using robotics, but we are still happy to back. So my answer would be in the realm of some possibility. I think we would. Otherwise, we would stick to more, given the size and thesis, we would stick to more realistic stuff for us personally.
So the next question from my side is, if you were made the Minister of Policy to decide government policy on this for a day, what is the one thing that each of you would want in terms of regulation which is changed, which you would think would help the ecosystem? One point each, that if you could change anything, what would you change?
Siddharth, go ahead. I think you're muted.
Siddharth, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah. So see, I would say
You're cutting off, Siddharth. Okay. Maybe Rishi, you could jump in till Siddharth comes back on.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of, a couple of things come to mind, but maybe the lines that are drawn between geographies to back, I think there can be some flexibility because there's so much to learn. Similar problems being solved in different geographies. So is that something you can do? Like, Mr. Goyal's comment also, I think, was a little bit about what others are doing, and so can you really try and have that knowledge sharing in some way? I think that would be helpful to the ecosystem.
Great. So I think we are having some challenges with Siddharth. So maybe Rishi. Oh, okay. Siddharth is back. Siddharth, what is the one thing that you would do if you were FM or if you were
Yeah.
Commerce Minister?
Yeah, I mean, see, I would say just make the whole process of investments from outside India into India much easier, and also the whole process of taking out the money much easier for foreign investors. I think being a US fund, it still takes us a lot of time procedurally to invest money into Indian startups, and then also at the time of exit, think about taking those proceeds outside to our fund. So just easing that process would be helpful when we start thinking about larger ticket investments and other things in the country.
Okay. Let me ask again, and I think this is more so in the case of Schneider, that probably you do this much the similar thing around the world, and maybe you have other countries where you're making these kind of investments. Is there some learning from those that you think would apply for startups in India, that what those are doing well? And if there is, on the other hand, something that you feel we are doing very well in India. So I would highlight one success and one weakness.
Yeah.
I think.
Sure. I mean, see, the good part is the fund is based in all the three important startup geographies. So in the US, in Europe, and in Asia Pacific, and we have a common IC. So a lot of the investments are being discussed in one common platform. I would say in terms of what we can really do better is to focus on some really interesting technological solutions and startups. And I think this was also something what Mr. Piyush Goyal was saying someday, that the Indian company shouldn't just be delivering food and stuff, but should be focusing on some real hardcore technical problems and statements. I would say if we can evolve into a startup ecosystem which is far more technologically driven versus models which are just pure business model innovation, that is one change I would expect over time. I know it's not easy because it requires a lot of systemic and structural changes in the way we think, the way we do things, but it should happen over time. So I would say that's one thing. The other thing which I like, which is going good, is the whole, I would say, the frugal innovation or surviving in any condition attitude of Indian entrepreneurs. What a team in India, and this is not just about cost base being low or other things being more economical. I think it's just the founder mindset and attitude. What a team can achieve maybe in a $5 million funding is maybe a team in the US would need at least $50 million in funding. And it's not just that, hey, it's easy to kind of get people in India. I think it's more about the approach and the attitude. What we have been really imbibed as a startup founder is so different in the country. So survival of the fittest is far more stronger in India compared to what I've seen in other countries.
Okay, related to this, let me ask another question. One of the big challenges any founder has is the moment you raise one round, you have to at some point start thinking about the next round of money that you will need. And the death knell of most startups is that they run out of cash. And specifically, again, for deep tech or other projects, you need you can't, as they say, you can't be half pregnant. You need to kind of pretty much go through the entire cycle before this comes out. Uh, how do you think the ecosystem can be made where, in a way, there can be some kind of a handoff system? Because while I understand that, yes, each organization some will support very early stage, some will support beyond ideation, some will support at, let's say, when a sample A is made, and then some will support when the proof of concept is already done. Is there kind of a handing off of the baton from one to the other? Normally, what happens in a VC is that there are early stage VCs who are well connected and they connect you. How does this ecosystem work? And is this any different from a VC ecosystem?
I think from our perspective, that's a great question, Sudhir. I've personally struggled with that. I think that is something in my experience has not developed the way it could on the CVC side, for sure. I think again, global linkages might be helpful. Like I can see right here that something could be relevant for me and Siddharth, and he's at a later stage than me. It's clear. So I think that's something that like a group like CII can really try and help and create that ecosystem. So that's my view.
That's exactly the startup idea I wanted to suggest to somebody, which was to say that there has to be some kind of a bazaar, for a lack of a better word, which is kind of having information on once you've made the investment, you've supported at some point, if there is information available to others, okay, you may have non-competes in terms of if you are doing something in steel, then you don't want anybody else to get it for some period of time or whatever. But on the other hand, there may be some complementary. So I think one idea that to me came out of what you guys were saying was there needs to be an information sharing, something even as simple as a portal, which in a way would say, okay, rather than going to 10,000 websites, there is one website which says, okay, these are the 5 companies that JSW is invested in or Schneider's invested in. And these are the kinds of support that they are looking, and then it becomes something which can become useful, because again, the challenges that we see is the success rate at the end ends up becoming, you have a lot of fatalities along the way, because either the money runs out or the ideation runs out, or there is some challenge which is there. Some startups obviously can scale very fast, but that's not the case with most.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Rishi's thoughts, and having that kind of a platform would be very helpful for both the CVC as well as for the startup by large.
Okay. One question that's just come up, which I'll tackle, and we have 5 minutes at the end, and to summarize is, at what stage do you think is the right time to go to a CVC? Is it a very early stage? Is it growth? Is it late stage? When should one, again, founders have a very limited time window, and they have to do everything from raising funds, which in some ways can be a big distraction, to actually focusing on what they want to do. So what's the right time, and how do you make a decision to go to a CVC?
Go ahead, Siddharth.
Yeah, no, I would say it's again highly subjective question because each fund has its own way of looking things. And what I'm learning is if I look at what Rishi is doing, he is like very doing early stage stuff, right? Maybe it could be a pre-series A, which would be a good stage for a company to reach out to Rishi. For me, it would be maybe a series A and beyond kind of companies who are at least doing a couple of $1 million of revenue. Anywhere between 2 and 10 million would make sense. I would say general rule of thumb is you should have a product in hand where you can really work with the CVC. I think going at the idea stage or at a concept stage could be too early. So as long as you have something to show to the CVC and have that ability to kind of work with their business units is a good starting point usually to approach a CVC.
I would agree, Sudhir, with that. If you can work with us, we could look at you. So you've passed those filters. It's beyond, I think, product market fit for sure in our case.
Great. So we are heading towards the end of the timeline. Obviously, this has been very, very helpful. I would request both Rishi and then Siddharth to have the last word. Maybe again, a 60-second, if you are a founder which has to talk to Rishi, and if you are a founder which has to talk to Siddharth, how do we ensure that their message goes out to whoever needs to be done? Because the challenge of startups ultimately is to make that first contact.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, Sudhir, that's exactly my role to make that first contact easy. And so, it sometimes, a large group like Schneider or JSW or others look onerous on how to approach. So that's why I think people like Siddharth and I exist to make that first connect possible. And anything that looks half relevant and you want to try, you must have a chat. You never know what opportunities get created when you speak. So from my perspective, anything loosely related to something that we do would be very happy for us to speak. And I think we can give you our emails or something if that's possible. And we would love to be in touch with anyone who wants to be. Yeah.
Rishi, if you could share that, I
Sure.
think
Sure.
everybody on maybe the message box
Yeah.
for people who to reach out to you.
Go ahead, Sid. Yeah.
Siddharth?
Yeah, no, fantastic. Absolutely. Echoing Rishi's sentiments, I would say very open for conversations. In fact, if you see my LinkedIn profile, I mentioned my email on my LinkedIn profile because I just genuinely love to hear all these startup ideas and founders, what they're doing. and I try to make an effort to really at least respond to as many as I can. I intentionally don't miss or ghost on people, so that's not usually the approach I take. So if you have an idea which you think could be relevant for Schneider, please drop us an email. You can reach out to me or any relevant of my team members. I think all of us are on LinkedIn, and usually as a team, we are pretty responsive in terms of again responding to the startups. So for sure, happy to hear more ideas.
Great. I want to make sure that we end on time. So again, thank you so much to all of the participants. Thank you to the speakers, Rishi, Siddharth. This has been very helpful. I'm sure in the next weeks you're going to get a flood of emails, and hopefully, if this even results in a couple of significant conversations happening, then I think we've achieved our objective. From my point of view, I just want to end by saying that this is an inflection point for our country. So much is happening. Fortunately, corporates are doing well. They're also sitting on a lot of capital. If you see the capital deployed in the private sector, that actually is a cause for concern, because many companies are sitting on surplus capital where they have to find avenues for judicious investment. And from my point of view, this can be one of the best avenues for return. Siddharth gave us the magic figure of 30%. If many corporates can get a return of 30% on their money, then their share prices and their valuations will be a lot better. So I think corporate CVC hopefully can add to the bottom lines of many companies while also doing a lot of good for the ecosystem. So really thankful to everybody for joining in, thankful to the speakers, thankful for the CII team. And on behalf of CII, let me thank all of you for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, thanks.
Hopefully we have some ladies in the audience. We didn't have one in this between the three of us, but again, thanks to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stop the recording now, I think. Thank you. Thank you, Rishi, Siddharth.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I'll log off now. And Ninad, thanks. Oh, sorry, Ninad, you were there. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sudhir. Thank you for accepting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anant, ensure this doesn't go in the recording, last part.
No, I'll trim that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lovely.
Thanks.
Let's catch up, Sudhir, sometime. I'll
Done
connect
that.
you.
Let me know when you're in town. We'll
Sure,
catch
sure. Thank you. Bye-bye.